All right, let's dive right in. Today we're going to talk about a fundamental promise, something baked right into the American justice system. It's the Eighth Amendment. And it's super short, but it's incredibly powerful. Think of it like a guardrail against the government having way too much power.
I mean, seriously, think about this for a second. What's to stop a judge from just throwing an insane number out there? $1 billion. It sounds crazy, but it's a terrifying thought, right? That a punishment could be so extreme, so completely out of proportion that it could just ruin someone. This question isn't just for show, it really gets to the core of what the justice system is supposed to protect us from.
So, where does the answer come from? Well, it's actually found in just a single sentence, a principle so important, so absolutely crucial, that the founders put it right into the Bill of Rights. Let's look at the exact wording, because it's pretty amazing.
And there you have it. That's it. Just 28 words. So simple, so direct, but wow, is it profound. See, this one little sentence actually creates 3 totally separate shields, 3 ways to protect regular citizens from any abuse of power by the legal system.
Okay, so let's break those 3 shields down. Each one is like a pillar holding up this idea of fairness, and together, they're the heart and soul of the whole amendment.
All right, first up, excessive bail. This is so important because it kicks in before you're even found guilty of anything. It basically says your freedom can't be held for ransom with some ridiculously high price tag. The bail has to make sense for the crime and the situation. It stops a judge from basically locking you up and throwing away the key just by setting a number that's impossible for anyone to pay.
Next, we've got protection against excessive fines. This is huge. It stops the government from using money as a weapon to just crush someone. The punishment has to fit the crime, right? A fine can't be so huge that it completely bankrupts you for something minor. It's all about keeping things in proportion.
And that brings us to the big one. The one everyone talks about and debates, no cruel and unusual punishments. This is basically society drawing a line in the sand. It says, nope, we're not going to do things that are barbaric or just plain inhumane. Now, what is cruel and unusual? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Courts have been wrestling with it for centuries, and the definition keeps changing as our own ideas about justice and fairness evolve.
Okay, so that's what the words say, but how does this actually work in the real world? I mean, this isn't just some dusty old legal theory. The Eighth Amendment has this incredible, fascinating history of being challenged, tested, and redefined in some really huge court cases.
And you know what's really interesting? The Founding Fathers didn't just pull this idea out of thin air, not at all. They were actually history buffs looking back at all the terrible abuses of power under the English monarchy. So they borrowed the core idea directly from a famous document, the English Bill of Rights from way back in 1689.
This timeline really shows you the whole journey. It kicks off as this idea in 17th century England. Then, boom, it gets locked into U.S. law in 1791. But it doesn't stop there. Take a look at 1972, Furman v. Georgia. This was a game changer. The Supreme Court didn't say the death penalty was illegal, period. What they said was that the way it was being applied, kind of randomly and unfairly, that could be cruel and unusual punishment. And then jump all the way to 2019 with Timms v. Indiana. This case confirmed that the rule against excessive fines isn't just for the federal government. Nope, it applies to the states too. So this idea from centuries ago is still making waves in local justice today.
And that legacy is alive and well today. I mean, the Eighth Amendment is the legal backbone for all sorts of modern challenges. We're talking about things like the death penalty, obviously, torture, but also things you might not think of, like inhumane prison conditions, horrible overcrowding or not getting basic medical care. It's even used to fight something called excessive civil forfeiture. That's where the government can take your property, claiming it's connected to a crime, even if you, the owner, haven't been convicted of anything. Wild, right?
So that brings us right up to today. And the key thing to remember is that the story of the Eighth Amendment is nowhere near finished. Its meaning is still being fought over, debated, and redefined in courtrooms all across the country, right now. At the end of the day, those 28 words, there's so much more than just old text on a piece of paper. They're a living, breathing part of our legal system. They're that core promise of fairness, that essential check on power. It makes sure that even when the government has the right to punish, it still has to act with a basic sense of humanity. And all this leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. The definition of cruel, well, it's not set in stone. It changes as we change, as our society's values change. So think about it. What are we doing today? What things do we consider totally normal that maybe, just maybe,
future generations will look back on and call cruel and unusual. It's a pretty powerful thought. Thanks so much for joining me.